Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, another in my series of Milestone Moments. These are moments in a band's career that sets them off into the stratosphere, or it can be an album that changes rock music forever. So the artist that I've picked for today is the Jimi Hendrix Experience and their first album, Are You Experienced? If there was ever an album that's a milestone moment, it's got to be this one, right? This album changed hard rock forever. It changed the way people played guitar. Eric Clapton before this was the maybe first really big electric guitar hero. Eric Clapton taking the blues and putting it in a very electric environment, the cranked amplifier, the heavy sound that he had with Cream. The Fresh Cream had come out in 1966, but when this album and Jimi Hendrix landed in 1967, it really changed everything. It really felt like Jimi was coming from a completely different planet. And I've often said that I don't believe that Jimi is alive. I believe he just stopped by the earth for a little bit, hung around for a little while, blew everybody's mind, and now he took off for another universe. He's somewhere in another universe now, blowing other people's minds. So Hendrix, before this, he's kind of touring around on the rhythm and blues circuit. He gets discovered by Chas Chandler, who was in the Animals, who wanted to get into managing. He discovers Jimi Hendrix, takes him over to England, puts a band around him, Mitch Mitchell, Noel Redding. Mitch Mitchell is, for me, kind of in the line of Ginger Baker from Cream, maybe a little bit more, not as heavy-hitting as Ginger Baker, but he's got this sort of jazzy, technical way that he plays. He's a very busy drummer. They get Noel Redding into the band famously for Noel Redding shows up to play a rhythm guitar. They didn't need rhythm guitar. Jimmy dug his hair, so they put him on bass. And Noel Redding's just a pretty, a straightforward kind of bass player, which is needed in this band. We've got Mitch Mitchell flying all over the drums, and you got Jimi Hendrix blasting off into the universe with his sounds and everything. And really, it's hard to put into context how different this was. I mean, like I mentioned, Clapton was doing his thing with the blues and sort of turning it into a hard rock thing. But Jimmy lands and is just doing things that nobody else is doing. The sounds that he's getting, the technique that he's using. He's taking the blues, but he's totally reinterpreting it and just taking it into this completely new direction. What he did sonically with the guitar, with the heaviness of his guitar, the whammy bar stuff that he did, the sound effects, and hey, all that would mean nothing if you didn't have songs behind it. And Jimmy was a great songwriter as well as a really good singer too, and a great lyricist. So you combined all that together, the whole vibe of the whole thing, just the album cover, the album title, Are You Experienced? You know that you're in for a trip with this one, and it is. Starts off with Purple Haze, legendary song. Just that guitar riff at the beginning is a great example. It's a blues-based riff, but the way Jimmy twists it around, it doesn't sound like a stock riff. It's just a really quirky and very, very unique. The guitar solo at the end, where it sounds like there's more than one guitar playing, it's like this high-pitched note. Again, that's another effect Jimmy using at that time and really groundbreaking. Manic Depression is awesome. This is an example of Mitch Mitchell just sort of going crazy. It's got a 3 feel to it, so it has this sort of bouncy feel to it. Just great. Jimmy's guitar solo is like, it always sounded like Jimmy went in and just turned his amp up on 10. It always sounds like his guitar is ready to explode in the studio. And it should be mentioned, the production on this, for 1967, a lot of albums were not in stereo, and this album is also released in mono. And sometimes the stereo versions of records from this era, I've talked about the Beatles, a lot of their stuff, the stereo versions were sort of afterthoughts. Fresh Cream, the stereo version of that is not easy to listen to. It's like the vocals are all jammed hard in one speaker, the instruments are all in another. It's very sort of unsettling, but this is very well mixed, even in the stereo version. It sounds great. There's a lot of separation in the instruments, and even though it's 1967, so it sounds a little bit like that, it still sounds great, and it has aged very well. It packs a lot of punch, the guitars, the drums, everything. And considering back then they were only recording with 4 tracks, which is incredible, which means basically the drums, probably guitar, vocals, maybe room for one or an overdub here and there. So very simple technology, but they really made a timeless, great sounding recording. Hey Joe is another popular one from this. It's a cover of a song by Billy Roberts, but Hendrix just completely makes it its own, sort of like he would do with All Along the Watchtower from Electric Ladyland. Lover Confusion is awesome. Jimmy's whammy bar stuff. May This Be Love. This is a good example of Hendrix. People first think of the crazy soloing and the stuff that he was doing with that, which was absolutely amazing. But Hendrix was also an amazing rhythm guitar player, and I think maybe some of that was from his days as a rhythm and blues sideman. And Jimmy's rhythm playing is very interesting, very melodic in itself. And again, nobody was really playing like that in a hard rock setting. What he did with the rhythm stuff, the way he moved everything around, just fantastic. I Don't Live Today, the drum intro thing there is great. Wind Cries Mary, here's an example of Jimmy's rhythm playing, just beautiful rhythm playing, great lyrics. I always loved Jimmy's lyrics. He always sort of floated between sort of the trippy, psychedelic stuff like I Don't Live Today or Manic Depression, Purple Haze, but then he'd also have these really sort of down-to-earth, more gentle lyrics like the Wind Cries Mary. His guitar solo in this is great. It's not anything super technical, the solo, but it's just so melodic, so well placed. Again, Hendrix was coming from the blues, but it never sounds like he's just playing sort of stock blues licks. It's like it's been filtered through his soul or something, and it comes out this just completely unique thing. It's incredible. Fire is an upbeat, fun one. Third Stone from the Sun, here's a great example of Hendrix just doing things with the guitar. And it's sort of fitting that it's this sci-fi themed vibe to it, because again, like I mentioned earlier, and for people at the time, it sounded like Hendrix was, where did this guy come from? It was really like he landed from outer space, and this song really plays into that with all the crazy sound effects, the bass playing that repeated ostinato bass line. And I always loved the sort of talk back, it sounds like somebody on a walkie-talkie radio thing talking. It's a little hard to understand him, but then there's this great line at the end where we hear him go, and you will never hear surf music again. I think that's just amazing. And Hendrix had that whole sort of vibe to him, man, where he looked so cool. He was just so like laid back but intense at the same time. So I love Third Stone from the Sun. This really nobody playing guitar like this at that time and writing compositions like that. Foxy Lady, starting off with the big feedback sound from Hendrix. Again, this was something he used guitar feedback like an instrument. He was able to use the feedback and incorporate it into songs and make it part of his sound in the compositions. And then the last song on the record, one of my favorite Hendrix songs, Are You Experienced? It's got these weird, it sounds like the drums or something is like weird reverse gated thing adding to the rhythm of it. His solo in this is this sort of reversed thing where he played the solo and then they flipped the tape around, so it has like this it's sort of coming in and out, and incredible. The chords, the lyrics to it, just the whole vibe to it. But first, Are You Experienced? I mean, just absolutely crazy, great, love it. What a fantastic debut, mind-blowing. debut album. It's not, it doesn't take Hendrix any time to sort of make a name for himself. He just sort of puts this album out and everybody's minds are officially blown. I love, there's a story in there was a Jimi Hendrix movie that came out, I think, in the late 70s. And there's a scene where I think it's Pete Townsend or it might have been Eric Clapton talking about that Hendrix, because he went to England first. And so they knew about him over there first. And one of them says, like, they called a meeting, like to meet at a movie theater, at the back of a movie theater. It was like Townsend, Clapton, and Beck maybe, or somebody, but just the heavyweights of the guitar scene at the time. And they got together to sit sort of in the back of this theater in private to talk about Jimi Hendrix, like, what are we gonna do now? This guy just came in and just new book, new rules. It's a totally different world. And it just an amazing album. And like I said, it wouldn't hold up if it wasn't for the songs. The songs are great. The songs have stood the test of time. Purple Haze is almost like a time capsule. This whole album is almost like a time capsule for the whole like hippie late 60s Woodstock type of thing. So it's an album that stood up very, very well. I can listen to it over and over again. You put headphones on, it seems like you hear some little nuance that you just never heard before. So a timeless, classic Milestone Moment album. Okay, let me know in the comments down below. What do you guys think of this record? How has it aged for you? What do you think of Jimi Hendrix, his place in the history of the guitar, this album when it landed? Let me know in the comments down below. Facebook page, Lair of the Alchemist on Facebook. Check that out. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, are you experienced?